Hello and welcome to another Murder Talk Radio. I am Parker Evans.
And I'm Victoria Evans.
If our podcast sounds a little bit different, it's because we are recording in a different room than normal. The last episode and the next few, at the very least, will likely be in this room. And so, if it sounds at all different or echoey or boxy, that's because we are literally in a little box of a room. And there's only so much you can do to engineer that away. But today we will be talking about John List. And after that, The Killer Nurse. A double feature for you guys.
Yay. John List killed his mother, wife, and 3 children on November 9th, 1971.
He seems nice.
Ugh. He looks like a creepy film director.
He does. He almost looks like he looks like if Martin Scorsese and Woody Allen had a love child.
Who turned into a serial killer.
Yeah, who turned into a character from a Quentin Tarantino movie.
Yeah. The back of his head is like super flat.
His whole head is super flat. Like
Yep.
the back is, but also so is the top.
Yeah, he's got a weird head. He has like a mushroom cloud of a head. He
He does.
actually reminds me of, I can't remember the character's name, but the yellow guy from Sin City.
It's a shame we don't have a phrenologist handy.
It is.
For
Just sitting in the corner with a couple books. And
anything they'd be able to tell us would be useless, but still. They'd be able to tell us something about this guy's weird head.
Kevin, that's the yellow guy's name.
Oh, I thought that was the phrenologist.
I mean, it could be if we ever got one.
I wonder if there are any practicing phrenologists these days.
I don't know. I'm not totally sure what a phrenologist is. I'm just going with it.
Phrenologists were sort of a combination of very, very early, you might think of them as sort of psychiatric criminologists who believed that the size and shape of someone's skull
Oh, right.
inferred something about their criminality.
Oh, that was super racist.
It's not a valid science. It was
No, it doesn't make any sense.
it was nonsense. And
Back to John List.
he was born in Bay City, Michigan, where he graduated from Bay City Central High School in 1943, after which he enlisted in the United States Army, where he served as a lab technician through World War II, and he didn't have any siblings. He was an only child.
His father died the year after he enlisted in the military. When List discharged in 1946, he enrolled at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, where he earned a degree in business administration and then a master's in accounting. So, smart guy. He made it through school.
He was also commissioned as a lieutenant through his college's ROTC program, and as you might expect from someone who killed their whole family, he was a devout Lutheran and a Sunday school teacher.
Typical. In November 1950, List was recalled back to active duty military service during the Korean War, and while stationed at Fort Eustis in Virginia, he met Helen Morris Taylor, who was the widow of an infantry officer killed in action in Korea. They married on December 1st, 1951, in Baltimore, Maryland.
The Army reassigned him to the Finance Corps, making use of his education in business administration and accounting. And after he finished his second tour in 1952, he took a position with an accounting firm in Detroit. After that, he took a job as an audit supervisor at a paper company in Kalamazoo, which sounds just fascinating. And while he was auditing the paper company in Kalamazoo, He and his wife Helen had 3 children.
It really does sound like such a boring wife. Like brown suitcase boring.
What's wrong with a brown suitcase?
I don't know. I just think of it as like a community theater prop. Brown suitcase.
Do you mean briefcase?
Briefcase. That's what I meant.
Oh.
My brain's not completely working. I feel drunk, but I'm completely sober. Like my head is fuzzy.
That's strange. I feel sober, but I'm completely drunk. My head is clear as a bell.
That sounds nice.
I'm not really drunk.
Honestly, though, you could be, and it's hard to tell with you. You have a high tolerance.
Do you know who was drunk? John List's wife, Helen, who was an alcoholic.
Yeah, and apparently had some other issues.
Yeah, she was also syphilitic. Her first husband gave her syphilis,
Yeah.
which made her increasingly unstable during their time together. And she did not disclose her status as a syphilitic to John List prior to her marriage.
Horrible.
Yeah, not great.
But in 1959, List was promoted to general supervisor of the entire accounting department, so that's exciting.
He doesn't... His picture does not strike me as someone who got very excited about very much.
No, it doesn't. He almost reminds me of Eustace from Courage the Cowardly Dog.
Oh my god, he does. He looks just like Eustace.
He actually really does.
Oh my god. In 1960, Helen's daughter from her first marriage to the infantryman who died, her name was Brenda, she got married to her own husband and moved out of their house, after which John List took a job with Xerox, and the rest of the family moved to Rochester, New York. He eventually grew into the position of Xerox's Director of Accounting Services.
Wow.
Fancy.
In 1965, List accepted a position as vice president and comptroller at a bank in Jersey City, New Jersey. He moved with his wife, children, and mother into Breeze Knoll, a 19-room Victorian mansion in Westfield, New Jersey. That sounds really nice and also creepy.
Yeah, and then one day in 1971, November of 1971, he shot his wife Helen, who was then 46, in the back of the head. And then he shot his mother Alma, who was 84, above her left eye at their lovely Westfield, New Jersey mansion while their children were at school. He used a Steyr 9mm handgun that belonged to him, as well as a Colt .22 revolver that I guess he stole from his father.
Kept that thing for a long time.
Yeah. When his daughter Patricia, who was 16, and his son Frederick, who was 13, came home from school, he also shot them in the back of the head. And then he made himself lunch. Supposedly a cold-cut sandwich, so I don't know if that counts as a last meal, but it kind of was. He didn't have it in prison, so it wasn't a death row last meal, but...
I wonder what kind of cold cuss. After that, List drove to the bank that he worked at to close both his and his mother's bank accounts. Then he went to Westfield High School, where he watched his oldest son, 15-year-old John, play in a soccer match.
That's gotta be weird. You kill your whole family and then you go watch your son play soccer?
Yeah, I wonder what he was thinking.
And you know you're gonna kill him after? That's very...
Psychosis.
I guess. His reason, we'll get to it in a minute, but his reason was... the reason that he allegedly did this was as insane as you would expect it to be from somebody who would do something like this. But so after the soccer match, he drove John home and then shot him repeatedly. The evidence from the scene suggests that his son actually attempted to defend himself. List took their bodies and laid them out on sleeping bags in the mansion's ballroom. He left his mother's body in her apartment, which was up in the attic of the mansion. And he wrote a long 5-page letter to his pastor that was found on the desk in his study. And List claimed that the reason that he killed his whole family is that he saw too much evil in the world, and he killed his family to save their souls. Then he cleaned the crime scenes, he removed his picture from all the family photographs in the house, he turned the radio to a religious radio station, and then he fled.
What a freak.
And we actually have a picture if you click on the link to this article. I think it's in our archives, so if you're a paid subscriber, you'll be able to see this. There's a picture of his family laid out on these sleeping bags. Very, very sad.
It really is. For about a month, nobody realized that anything had happened, which is crazy, in my opinion, especially when you have school-age kids.
It was a long time ago. This happened in the... Were we in the early 70s?
Yeah.
Yeah, so different time. Truancy laws existed, but they were not what you might call well enforced.
Yeah, this was November 9th, 1971. Yeah, like the bodies weren't uncovered until December 7th, so almost a month later.
Well, John actually sent notes to the schools that his children went to and claimed that they were visiting their maternal grandmother in North Carolina and that she was sick. And she actually was sick, and she had canceled a visit to the mansion because of it. And if she had made the trip, she probably would have been his 6th victim.
Probably.
He also stopped milk, mail, and newspaper deliveries from the house. Because in 1971, you could still get milk delivered fresh daily to your house.
That sounds nice.
Eh.
I don't know. I can't even really drink a lot of milk. It makes me sick.
Makes me sick. So they actually uncovered the crime because neighbors noticed that all of the mansion's rooms were lit up and there was no activity they could see in the house, and then the light bulbs started burning out. So all of the whole house was lit up, and then one by one rooms started to go dark. And that made the neighbors suspicious, and they called the police, who entered through an unlocked window to the basement, and that's where the ballroom was, and they discovered the bodies.
List had actually assumed a new identity and remarried. And after almost 18 years, was arrested in Virginia on June 1st, 1989, after the case was featured on America's Most Wanted. Absolutely insane that he got away with it for that long and freaking remarried.
After his arrest, he told authorities that in addition to the religious motivations, he said his family was straying from their religious faith, and that's why he murdered them, but also he had financial problems, and that contributed to him murdering them. And he believed, supposedly, that killing them would assure their souls an afterlife in heaven, where he claimed that he hoped to eventually join them, after killing them. Bizarre.
If any religious people are listening, I'm sorry, but I can't.
This next picture, it's funny, in the earlier pictures that we had of him, I totally agree that he looked like Eustace from Courage the Cowardly Dog. But in this picture that you can see at this point in the article, you know who he reminds me of?
Who?
He looks like Johnny Soprano. Don't you think so?
Yeah, actually, yeah.
When he's like old and
I could see it.
old and losing his mind.
I feel like he would have a New Jersey accent. Like a thick, strong Jersey accent. I could see it. According to trial testimony, Helen had actually lied and pressured List into marriage by claiming that she was pregnant, then insisted that the marriage take place in Maryland, which did not require a premarital syphilis test. Blood tests are no longer required by any U.S. state to obtain a marriage license, but were once very common, with all but 8 states requiring premarital blood tests by 1954, which is interesting. But clearly, Helen had an agenda, and she had figured a way around the blood test so that she could, get a husband and I guess have a life for herself.
It seems like she kind of conned this guy into marriage. She lied about being pregnant, pressured him to marry her, and then took him to a place where she didn't have to get a blood test that would have shown him that she had syphilis, which, is kind of something you probably don't want in a wife.
Yeah, a syphilitic wife that's willing to con you and lie about being pregnant is so beyond. Yeah.
She was also an alcoholic, and the disease plus the alcoholism, according to court testimony, allegedly transformed her into what someone called an unkempt and paranoid recluse who frequently publicly humiliated John List and who rated his sexual skills poorly compared with her syphilitic first husband, which I guess kind of makes sense because, presumably if you get syphilis, you have more sexual experience than someone who didn't get syphilis.
Didn't Nietzsche get syphilis like the first time he ever had sex with someone?
Again, just theoretically. I don't think so. Maybe. I've never heard it was the first time. But
No. He was like a teenager and he saw a prostitute.
He did get syphilis, though, and that's what he died from.
Yeah. I could be wrong about that. Anyway, that is awful, and it doesn't justify shooting her, but that, at least if that was the reasoning that he gave, it would make more sense to me than I was trying to save her soul. Were you?
Yeah, but he
killed
the kids, too, and also his own mother.
Yeah, and the financial pressures of taking care of a family also made a bit more sense. But I don't know what their financial situation looked like, but...
They don't to me because he was the vice president of a bank.
And they lived in like a mansion.
Yeah, maybe
with like a freaking ballroom.
Maybe don't buy an 18-room mansion to relieve yourself of some of those financial pressures. Just a thought.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot going on in this situation.
He was convicted on 5 counts of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to 5 consecutive terms of life in prison, and he died in prison in 2008 at the age of 82.
Mm-hmm. That is the story of John List, family annihilator.
And this was short, so we're actually going to do another one as well. And for the second story, who are we going to be talking about?
Lucy Letby.
The Killer Nurse.